Hey guys, what's going on? MJ Madness here, and the NHL season is right around the corner. So today, I'm going to be giving you my 2018-19 complete NHL standings predictions. Basically, what I'm going to be doing in this video is breaking down every single team and going through both the Eastern and Western Conference from 15 all the way up to 1 and giving you my predicted standings. Kicking things off in the Western Conference, in 15th place at the basement, I have the Vancouver Canucks. The Canucks lost the two faces of their franchise, Henrik and Daniel Sedin, to retirement in the offseason, and while they were getting older, they still were two of the team's leading scorers, and there's no denying that their loss is going to hurt. The Canucks do have a couple nice prospects and a few nice pieces. Brock Besser definitely stands out, but this team, I think, is still several years away from seriously contending for a playoff spot, and they definitely have a lot of holes and a serious lack of depth. In 14th place, I have the Arizona Coyotes. I think the Coyotes are a team that is trending in the right direction. They are slowly but surely building up that young prospect pool, and they had a really great end to last season. But, like the Canucks, I still think they're a few years out from making it into the playoffs. In 13th place, I have the Minnesota Wild. This is going to be one of my bolder predictions in the Western Conference, but I really think that the Wild aren't going to be a good team this year. Of course, they've consistently been one of the best teams in the West. They've made the playoffs 6 years in a row, but their core is made up of old, aging players, and they've really stagnated and haven't made many moves in the last couple of off seasons. I think this is the year that we see a lot of regression from that aging Wild core, and I think they're really going to fall back down to earth this season into 13th place in the Western Conference. In 12th place, I have the Edmonton Oilers. This is a really difficult team to peg because, on one hand, they have arguably the best player in hockey in Connor McDavid, a player who can make you competitive any night that you're playing, but on the other hand, there are just so many flaws to this team. They have virtually no depth on forward apart from their first line. They have little talent on defense, and of course their goaltending is very shaky as well. So I don't really know what to make about this team. In the end, while I do think they'll be competitive, I just think they don't have enough pieces built around McDavid for them to make the playoffs this year. In 11th place, I have the Colorado Avalanche. The Avalanche were a playoff team last year. They definitely shocked a lot of the NHL, who didn't really see them as a playoff team going into the season, but this year I think they fall back down just a little bit. The Avalanche are still a good team. Nathan McKinnon is criminally underrated, but I think their success was a little bit unsustainable, and I don't think they're going to be as good this season. In 10th place, I have the Anaheim Ducks. The Ducks, I think, like the Wild, are a team that's been a really good squad in the West the past couple of years, but up front, their forward core is just made up of old, aging, and injured players like Perry and Kessler. Getzlaf is still solid, but when he falls off a cliff, I think this team is really going to go down to the basement of their Western Conference. Of course, I still do like their defense. They have some good young pieces there, and their goaltending is definitely solid, which I think will keep them competitive throughout the season, but I just don't think they have enough to be a playoff team this year. In 9th place, I have the Los Angeles Kings. I was really struggling with the Kings. They have still so many good pieces that won them the cup only a couple years ago. Doughty, Quick, even Kopitar. Those players are still elite. And of course, the addition of Ilya Kovalchuk is super intriguing, and I'm really curious to see what he does to that Kings team. But in the end, the Western Conference is just very solid this year, and I don't think there's enough room for the Kings to make it into the playoff picture. I see them on the bubble and fighting for a spot all season long, but in the end, I think they fall just short and end up in 9th place in the Western Conference. In 8th place, I have the Chicago Blackhawks. This is perhaps my boldest Western Conference prediction. The Chicago Blackhawks had, quite frankly, a horrible season last year, and most people are predicting them to be the worst team in the Central Division, if not the worst team in the West. And while I do agree that the Blackhawks do have their flaws, I think they are being severely overlooked by most NHL experts and predictors. And I think the Blackhawks are still good enough to make it and squeak into the playoffs. They still, like the Kings, have those elite pieces in Duncan Keith, Patrick Kane, Jonathan Toews, even Corey Crawford in goal if he can stay healthy. But they also have their fair share of young talent that's on the way up. And while I do agree that they're aging, and I don't think they're a serious Stanley Cup contender anymore, I still think they're good enough to shock the league and make it into the playoffs. In 7th place, I have the Dallas Stars. I think the Stars are going to be the other wildcard team along with the Hawks, and they are another difficult team to peg because they, again, have a lot of elite talent, but I still don't think their depth is enough for them to make waves in the Western Conference playoffs. Seguin and Benn and Radulov make up one of the best top lines in hockey. John Klingberg is an elite defenseman, and Ben Bishop, if he can play to his potential, is one of the best goalies in the league. But they're just a weirdly inconsistent team. And this year, I do think they get back to the playoffs, but I don't think they seriously contend for one of the top spots in the Western Conference. In 6th place, I have the Calgary Flames. The Flames are one of the most improved teams in hockey, and I definitely think that they have the potential to be a dark horse contender in the Western Conference. If Mike Smith can hold up in goal and give them another solid performance, then I think there is no reason that they can make some waves. I really like the moves they've made this offseason. I still think they have one of the best and most underrated defensive corps, and they have added so much depth to their forward this year. Last year, one of their biggest struggles was that outside of their top line and the 3M line, they really didn't have enough depth, and their third and fourth line weren't contributing. But bringing in Elias Lindholm, James Neal, Austin Czarnik, Derek Ryan, all these players to fill out their depth, I think that overall they're just going to be a really solid team from top to bottom. And again, if goaltending can come through, then I see no reason that they can't surprise a lot of people this season. In 5th place, I have the St. Louis Blues. I really like this Blues team. I still think Vladimir Tarasenko is incredibly talented, but I think the addition of Ryan O'Reilly is one of the most underrated and best moves that any team has made this offseason. With that, they have some of the best center depth in the league. They still have some great talent, and I think overall they're just a really well-run and solid team that's going to make it up to 5th in the Western Conference. In 4th place, I have the Vegas Golden Knights. Many people think the Knights might come back down to earth this season after making it all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals as an expansion team. But my prediction is that last season was not a fluke for the Vegas Golden Knights. I think they are seriously a good team, and they are going to be here to stay. While they may not make it back to the Stanley Cup Finals, they are still incredibly solid, and they have what it takes to, as a whole, be a competitive team in the Western Conference, and that's why I see them still staying near the top in 4th place in the West. In 3rd place, I have the San Jose Sharks. I think the Sharks are going to be the winners of the Pacific Division and a serious cup contender this season. The addition of Erik Karlsson cannot be understated. That is a huge move and gives them one of the best, if not the best, defensive corps in the entire NHL. But they also still have some serious firepower out front. They have solid goaltending, good coaching, and they're overall just a really scary team. I really like this Sharks team. I definitely think they're going all in because they have a few aging pieces, and I think that's really going to benefit them this season. I think that leads them to the top of the Pacific and near the top of the Western Conference. In 2nd place, I have the Winnipeg Jets. The Jets are a team that I think is going to dominate the West for years on end, because what is so scary about them is not that they're already one of the best teams in the West, but that they are doing it with such a young core, and most of their incredibly important pieces are still all under the age of 25. It can't be understated how amazing it is when your best players are also your youngest, because that means that the Jets are still going to improve, and I definitely see them being a powerhouse in the Western Conference for years to come. I think this season it's going to be a battle between them and the team in front of them for first place in the Western Conference, but I think the Jets just don't have as much experience, and that's what's going to keep them in second. And in first place, I talked about how the Jets would be battling this team all season long, but I think that the Nashville Predators will be the best team in the Western Conference this year. The Preds are still an elite team and one of the best in the league. They also have an argument for one of the best defense corps in the league. They have elite goaltending, and while they don't necessarily have any studs up front, they just collectively are extremely deep and well-rounded. And overall, they're just a really, really solid team that has only gotten better and should once again compete for the Cup this season. That's going to wrap up my predictions for the Western Conference. Now, let's move into the East. Kicking off the Eastern Conference, we have the Ottawa Senators in 16th place. And not only do I think that the Sens will be the worst team in the Eastern Conference, I think they'll be the worst team in the entire NHL as well. This all starts with bad ownership, but it's transferred on to bad management, and now with the loss of Erik Karlsson, even bad players. I honestly feel sorry for Senators fans, but as long as Eugene Melnyk owns this team, I fear that they're going to be a very bad team for a very long time. In 15th place, I have the Detroit Red Wings. The Red Wings did make some nice picks in the most recent NHL entry draft, but they still have a long way to go, and I think it'll be several years before the rebuild is complete in Detroit. In 14th place, I have the New York Islanders. The Islanders are another fan base that I feel sorry for. It was absolutely heartbreaking to see how they reacted to losing John Tavares this offseason, and they definitely made some puzzling moves after the loss of him as well. Of course, I don't think the Islanders are going to be the worst team because of the fact they have Matthew Barzal, reigning Rookie of the Year, and he definitely does give the Islanders some hope and maybe the shining bright light of their season. But again, with the loss of Tavares, they really don't have much else on their team this year. In 13th place, I have the Montreal Canadiens. The Canadiens still have all-world goaltender Carey Price when he's healthy, and that alone will keep them out of the basement, but they, like the Islanders, have made some puzzling moves over the past couple of seasons, and I think they're in for a long rebuild. In 12th place, I have the New York Rangers. I think the Rangers are actually a team that is heading in the right direction. I like the moves that they're making, and I think they've embraced that they're not going to contend with their aging core and have definitely kick-started the rebuild, and I think that's the right way to go. They're still not there yet, but I think they're taking the steps towards becoming a contender once again. In 11th place, I have the Buffalo Sabres. The Sabres have been in one of the longest rebuilds in the NHL. They have had so many high draft picks, but with bringing in Rasmus Dahlin as the first overall pick, hopefully he is the player that can kickstart their journey into contention. They already have Jack Eichel up front, and Rasmus Dahlin could be an all-world defenseman and a once-in-a-generational talent. I definitely think that the Sabres have a great young core, and they are slowly but surely building up some high-end talent. They're going to get closer this year, but I just don't think they're going to get close enough to a playoff spot quite yet. In 10th place, I have the New Jersey Devils. The Devils were a playoff team last year, with Taylor Hall bringing home the MVP, and while he is an incredible talent and should alone make the New Jersey Devils competitive, I just don't think they have enough around him, and so I fear that the New Jersey Devils may regress a little bit. So while they'll still be competitive and in contention for a playoff spot, I don't think they get there this year. And in 9th place, I have the Carolina Hurricanes. I struggled placing this team in my standings predictions because it seems like for the past couple of seasons, they've been a team that many people have said could be a dark horse playoff contender. They always seem to be making good moves on paper in the offseason, and they always fall short. And once again, I think they've made some great moves. Bringing in Dougie Hamilton is going to absolutely transform their defense. They've changed up some coaching, changed up some players, changed up some ownership, and I think overall those are good moves, but I just can't trust this Hurricanes team. And so while I think they'll definitely be good, I have them on the bubble all season long fighting for a playoff spot, but I think they're going to come up short, maybe even on the last day of the season, and end up in 9th place in the Eastern Conference. In 8th place and getting into the playoff teams, I have the Florida Panthers. I really like this Panthers team, and I think a lot of people are underrating them going into the season. While they definitely didn't have the best season last year, they do have some very nice pieces. I love their top line. I love Aaron Ekblad. Roberto Luongo is an amazing guy. He's so much fun. And I think they're just a really likable team with some good young pieces, and I think they're being underrated by a lot of people going into this season. I think with no expectations, they should be able to surprise a few people and sneak into the playoffs in that second wild card spot. In seventh place, I have the Philadelphia Flyers. I really like this Flyers team. I think while they do have a lot of older talent, now they are bringing in some great young pieces as well. And overall, that's just combining like 5 or 6 really solid high-end players that I think could make the Flyers a competitive team for a few years down the road as well. While the Flyers haven't really been able to put it all together just yet, I think they're going to get closer, and that should be enough for them to snag the first wild card spot in the Eastern Conference this year. In sixth place, I have the Columbus Blue Jackets. The Blue Jackets have one of the best goaltenders in the league, though this may be his last year in Columbus, and they have some great pieces up front and on the back end as well. The Blue Jackets are your standard good team, but I still don't think that the Jackets have enough to truly make a run in the Stanley Cup playoffs. I'm not sure what it takes for them to make that run, but I just think that the current iteration of this team, while it may get them a playoff spot, isn't going to bring them enough to really do some damage and make some noise in the postseason. And in fifth place, and getting into the 5 teams that I think have a legitimate shot at representing the Eastern Conference in the Stanley Cup Finals, we have the Pittsburgh Penguins. The Penguins may not be getting first place in the Eastern Conference anymore, but they are still just as big of a threat as they were to win the Stanley Cup. They still have those elite talents, and while they may be getting a little bit older, overall, this is still a team that is a force to be reckoned with, and that nobody can sleep on in the Eastern Conference. In fourth place, I have the Boston Bruins. I really like this Bruins team. Obviously, they have an incredible top line, one of the best in the NHL, and I think they're building around that. They were a little one-dimensional last season, but I think if they can go beyond that top line, then that's when they'll be able to really make some noise in the postseason, rather than being just a regular season threat. So I see the Bruins taking a step forward, and finally maybe getting back to some more playoff success, after they had a little bit of a disappointing postseason last year. In third place, I have the Washington Capitals. The Capitals are coming up off of a Stanley Cup win. They finally got that monkey off their back. Alex Ovechkin got that Stanley Cup, and I am so happy for him. This Capitals team is pretty similar to the one last year, maybe a little bit worse, but they still should be a team in contention for the Stanley Cup all season long. In second place, I have the Toronto Maple Leafs. The Toronto Maple Leafs had perhaps the biggest win of all the NHL teams this offseason, bringing in top 10 talent John Tavares, and that makes them, I think, the team with the best center depth in the entire NHL, and they really could be a team that could finally bring back that Stanley Cup to Toronto. I still don't think that they're quite ready yet. I just don't think they have the experience, maybe, but they definitely have the talent. And I think they are for sure a team that is going to run wild through the Eastern Conference and definitely be one of the best teams in the entire NHL. And in first place, I think that the Tampa Bay Lightning will be the team that will win the Eastern Conference this season. This Lightning team is just so good. I don't even know how they managed to keep all those talented players under the cap space, but somehow they've meant to do it. And I really think that this team has it all. They have high-end talent up front as well as depth. They have an elite shutdown and offensive defenseman in Victor Hedman, as well as, again, depth on that D-core. And they have one of the best goalies in the entire league in Andrei Vasilevsky. Once again, I think the Tampa Bay Lightning are going to be a great team this season. And I think they should run the Eastern Conference and will bring home that number 1 spot in the standings in not only the Eastern Conference, but in the entire NHL as well. That's going to do it for this video. If you enjoyed my complete NHL standings predictions, be sure to hit that like button, and also let me know whether you agree or disagree with my predictions, and also let me know some of your own predictions for this upcoming NHL season down in the comment section. Also, be sure to subscribe to the channel if you aren't already. Hockey season is just starting up, and I will be giving you guys complete coverage all season long of all the news, all predictions, all previews, everything that's going on in the NHL. So, of course, stay subscribed and we'll get you that great content all season long. Thank you guys for watching and take care.